Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cyber Inspiration Podcast. My name is Evgeniy. I have been around cybersecurity for the last 20 years and I have a lot of experience working with a variety of cybersecurity vendors. My main work is vendor consulting and cybersecurity advisory for companies. As part of my passion in technology and cyber, I've been intrigued to learn how a company starts. I started the podcast to understand the thinking process and what motivated people to start their own company. This podcast is affiliated with Security Architecture Podcast. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you're located. I have a pleasure today to talk to Peter. We will talk about his book and the inspiration to write the book or several books. Peter, before we start, please introduce yourself and what you do.
Hi, I'm Peter Cohan, and probably the best way to introduce myself is to do it through a question. Evgeny, have you ever seen a bad software demo or heard an insufficient discovery conversation?
Unfortunately, I did, or fortunately, because when you see something bad, you learn how not to do it. So both of them. And it's a very good introduction by doing a question as well. And for people that are listening to me, watching out right now, you know, I usually interviewing people about books or vendors in cyber. Today, it's a bit of a mix because we're talking with Peter about general doing demo and discovery, but applying to cybersecurity as well. And we'll discuss today about the process and the mindset about the book and the journey. So when is the first book was released?
The first book was released in 2003, and that was the first edition of Great Demo.
And you released 4 books, 5 books so far?
It's 2 books, but Great Demo is now in its 3rd edition.
Great. So let's go first. I usually ask, what was the inspiration and the motivation to write the book?
So the inspiration to write the book is actually a 2-part process, and it started with me being a customer, or I should say rather a prospect. Way back, I had founded a business, started up from an empty spreadsheet and grew it up over a period of 5 years into a $30 million operation. And along the way, we realized we needed a CRM system. So as a prospect, we invited a handful of vendors to talk to us and show us their products. And intriguingly, of the 5 vendors we actually entertained, only 1 or 2 actually did any discovery at all. But everyone's demos were awful. They all took 2 hours. They were all end-to-end, meaning let me show you a long linear process of how you would set up a CRM system, enter a record, run a marketing campaign, and on and on and on. And at the end of these painful demos, I got the team together and said, what'd you guys think? Evgeny, what do you think they said after 5 days of 2-hour demos? What do you think they said?
This could be many different things. We didn't learn anything. We don't know what to do. It was too long. We are confused more than we started.
You have nailed it. It was ick, awful, painful, boring. They didn't understand our needs at all, and on and on. I said, I have bad news because we've been doing the same thing to our prospects as well. And it was one of those mind-expanding events. I said, we need to turn our demos upside down. So what we learned was that we were doing exactly the same thing to our prospects. We were boring them with long, linear, step-by-step demos, when what they really wanted was to see the deliverables that mattered for each individual job title. And so I said, we've got to turn our demos upside down. We've got to do the last thing first on a job title by job title basis. And that was the beginning of Great Demo methodology. And I had the chance to production harden it over a period of a few years, working in that business unit with my team. And then in 2002, I had a buddy who said, hey, we finally got a demo with Merck. And he had a software tool for pharma research. I said, great. He said, can you take a look at our demo and give me some feedback? And I said, absolutely. And before going over, physically went over to his site in a car, I typed up some notes of things I wanted to watch for and look for based on what we had been studying and learning and practicing, saw his demo, gave him some feedback. And then on the way back, I did the same. After I got back, I started typing up some more notes. And guess what? I just kept typing. I was writing the book. And that's how Great Demo was drafted way back in late 2002, the first edition.
Who's the target audience for the book?
The target audience is pretty much anybody that moves a mouse in demos. So primarily that's pre-sales people, that's sales engineers and related titles, but salespeople, customer success, implementation, consulting, these are all people that are doing demos and they are all the target audience. Marketing as well.
So it's quite a big target audience. Did you actually went and try to check how big is the target audience? Or you were so intrigued to write the book, so you decided, okay, I'm going to write it as it.
I have had experience, firsthand experience in a range of roles, including product marketing, technical marketing, customer marketing, field marketing. I was actually banished to Basel, Switzerland for 2 years in a field marketing and sales role. I've been in sales, I've been in sales management, I've been pre-sales leadership, I've been marketing management, senior management, and part of the C-suite. I was able to write this book embracing a pretty broad range of perspectives. But I would say the primary audience are pre-sales people and salespeople. That's the primary audience.
Now, I'm guessing it's your first book, so you didn't know everything what you want to write. Did you conduct research, or what was your validation process that you're writing something that's going to be relevant and correct?
Oh, that's guessing is probably the correct answer for this. The first effort of the book, I wrote it, I think, over a period of about a month and a half or 2 months. It was in
Wow.
me, it was ready to come out, and it just came out. The hard part was publishing. This is late 2002, and print on demand and Amazon wasn't really, I don't even think, publishing at that point. Their Kindle products were just infants. And so I was originally looking to publish the traditional route, and nobody wants to publish an unpublished author. And so I would go to bricks and mortar bookstores and look for publishing houses and write them and get rejected. And then I found this one house and I thought, that's a different one. And I went on their website and they talked about print on demand, which is what everything is today. And they basically were in the first edition, they were the process for getting that book published as a print on demand offering, meaning it was available both in paperback and online on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and some of their derivatives. That was an interesting exercise. Now it's all
It's
print on
different, yeah.
demand and it's delightfully easy to actually go through the physical publishing process. However, the slings and arrows of drafting, editing, and trying to reach a decision as to is it ready are still the same.
So you mentioned you wrote the book very quickly. I'm still wondering what motivated, or you just been writing the entire time? Like, is there a routine? Did you say, okay, every night I'm going to write, every week I'm going to write? Describe this process.
Writing the first edition and actually writing the second edition of the same book was really a process of gush. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew my audience. I knew what I wanted to communicate. And so writing it was fairly easy in that regard. Remember, I had had 3 or 4 years of experience teaching people and training my own teams to do this methodology. So much of the book came out of teaching people how to do this, and it was written almost in that voice. Here's how to do a software demo. Here's what you need to set it up. Here's what you need to prepare. You need to deliver it. Here are the key things you need to think about as you're going through that process, etc. So the book was actually already in my mind. It was fairly easy to get it out, both the first and the second edition. The third, I will comment and answer your question. The third edition was a more structured writing process. And it's just one of these realization things. I found I'm most productive somewhere around 3 o'clock till 5:30 in the afternoon. That just became a good window to draft or work on the book. Mornings, talking with customers, talking with prospects, doing webinars, doing various things, training, deliverables, etc. By 3 o'clock on the West Coast, where I'm located, pretty much the rest of the world has settled down or gone to sleep. So that just worked out to be a good time frame.
With the rapid change of technology, and from data centers to SaaS to AI right now, and so many different things. I know you released third editions, but we'll talk about this in a second as well, 3 editions. If there was something that happened during this time that you're on the right path, maybe it's a feedback from the readers, maybe it's a feedback from your students. Like, how do you know you're putting something people want?
Oh, that is a terrific question. When you first release a book, you have no idea, and you're just living in the land of hope. And with the first edition, I had no idea of the importance of, if you will, preloading reviews. So when reviews came into the book, I was pleasantly surprised. Wow, people are liking this. Oh, they're appreciating it. Several things happened. I used the book actually as a marketing tool. People would reach out to me and say, "Oh, I understand you teach demo skills training." This is after I launched my business, Great Demo, in 2003. And they'd say, "Tell me about it." And I would do a little description, but then I'd say, "You know what? Get a copy of Great Demo. And if you hate it, if you crack it open and start to read it and you hate it, then we don't need to have a conversation. But if you read it and it resonates, then let's get back together." So it became a marketing tool, actually kind of a fun marketing tool. People actually paid the $24 or whatever it was to be marketed to, but they were actually getting value at the same time. They were reading something useful. I got feedback from people saying, "Hey, the team's been reading your book. They love it. They're wondering if you do training for it as well." We're getting good testimonials of people who've tried out these ideas. Now they'd like to tune them up even more. So it was a positive feedback mechanism. When the book was released, I had no idea what was going to happen, but more and more people found it resonated. I got people that were almost disciples. They were so excited about the methodology because it was so different and so refreshing. You're getting to the end deliverable right at the very beginning of a demo. So if you're presenting to an executive, they don't have to sit in the room for an hour and a half to find out if there's anything interesting in the software. They see it right at the very beginning of the meeting, and they can say, "Hey guys, this looks good. I'm going to give a thumbs up for it. You guys can stay here and torture the vendor as long as you want, but I'm good with this product," for example. So the positive feedback is what really stimulated it and kept me going. I will offer a comment unbidden. Let's do this. Ask me, why did you write a second edition?
We just actually going to get there. I'm going to ask you this in a second. This was my next question. And my question is actually not just why. When did you decide to write the second edition? And how did you know it's not too early, for example?
Actually, the second edition came out only 2 years after the first edition. And it came out, I realized it was almost the moment that I actually got it published on Amazon that I realized I'm going to have to do a second edition because the book ages. And in fact, even the second edition has references to things like overhead projectors and modems and other ancient technologies. This is a cautionary statement for people. Think about when you're writing a book, how long before it ages out? And I'll give you an example here. People ask, why didn't you talk about artificial intelligence and generative AI and so forth in your third edition, which just came out a little over a year ago? And the answer is because that topic is moving so fast that whatever I wrote a year and a quarter ago is already going to be out of date. So you have to be cautious that your book may age out or at least begin to age painfully. The first edition included long lists, for example, of demo tools and demo software and demo resources. Those resources had changed, new ones had appeared, old ones had disappeared by the time, as I said, that I got it published. So I knew right away I need to take that stuff out. That either had to sit on a website separately, or somewhere else, but it couldn't be in, if you will, the locked down pages of the book itself. So the second edition was done largely to bring it up to date and to try to future proof it to a degree. And then I also wanted to add some additional chapters that I'd been working on and decided that just couldn't put them into the first edition of the book. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. If you can go back to yourself, like 2002, would you recommend to yourself writing the first edition, do stuff differently?
I have a voice in my books, and I actually like my voice, which is a weird thing. Although, when I went back and reread portions of the first edition just about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I was appalled by my writing. So hopefully your writing improves as you go forward and continue to do it. Now, a couple of comments on that. The first edition, I did all of the editing and proofing, and inevitably, there were spelling mistakes, there were grammar mistakes, there was logic mistakes in the book. The second edition, I had a couple of people take a look at it, write forwards and so forth, and that helped a lot. But what I've learned is really what you need is not just another set of eyes, but a professional set of eyes, a copy editor, not just an editor. An editor looks for grammar and spelling and things like that, but a copy editor who actually reads your book with a mindset of making sure that not only the grammar and the spelling is correct, but the logic is correct. Have you continued this thought in the same way? Did you shift from future tense to present tense? Did you already say this earlier in the book or in a different or better way, for example? And so I've been working with a copy editor since the second book, since Great Demo. And that person has really rather dramatically improved my writing and my writing style. At least that's what I believe. So I'd make that very strong recommendation. If you're going to be writing a book, you need a copy editor to help give you that kind of feedback and content.
Great.
It's mindful reading.
We're going to ask a question that I like to ask a lot about work-life balance. Do you believe in work-life balance, especially when you're writing? How do you maintain it?
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Each time I've drafted the book, I have gone a little bit heads down. And my wife and my kids, when I was drafting the first couple of things, would agree with that. I would be saying things like, oh, let me just have another 45 minutes or an hour. I got to get this thought down. Okay, so that definitely happened. I did try to manage it. However, one thing that I found just for me works really well when I was trying to put together a chapter or trying to organize some thoughts, I would go out for a walk. I live in a place here where I can walk up and down the coast. It's very refreshing. It's typically beautiful if it's not raining, because I'm up in Humboldt in Northern California. But that act of just getting out, getting away from my desk and the laptop and thinking about the book, thinking about the problems I was trying to solve, the ways I wanted to try to communicate things, was a very helpful process. It got me exercise, it got me fresh air. And because I carried my iPhone with me, I would periodically set myself a reminder. I'd say, hey, Peter, set a reminder for blah, 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 blah about the book, blah, 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 blah. And then so when I came back 30 or 45 minutes later or whatever, the reminder would have captured some of my thoughts that I could then harvest in my next versions of drafting.
As part of writing, and not just writing, we sometimes have rejection. And you already mentioned that you're writing people in the first book that reject you. So how do you cope with rejection? Not just
Poorly.
by editor, maybe friends, maybe the reviewers, maybe negative feedback. Tell me about your process and maybe it's going to help somebody else as well.
You could write the best book on earth. You could be Mark Twain. You could be Joseph Conrad. And there will still be haters out there. I have a 1-star review on Great Demo because somebody said the pages fell out. So this is not even my issue. This is an Amazon.com issue. The binding must have been bad on the book that they produced and shipped, but I got a 1-star review on it. How do you deal with that? Poorly. You have to look at the aggregate reviews. You have to look at the impact your book is actually having. And that for me is what I think gets me up in the morning. Periodically, I'll get an email or a LinkedIn message or similar from somebody that said, hey, I've been following you, or I read your book and I tried this and I just wanted to let you know it works and it's really changed my life for the better. That's it. That's my modus. That's why originally I wrote the books, and that's exactly what drives me forward. So yeah, rejection or poor reviews or whatever still annoy me. They hurt, but you balance them out with the knowledge that you are making a difference. And in fact, my LinkedIn tagline now is working to improve the world, one demo and one discovery conversation at a time. That is my modus.
I like this. Last question for today. People are different, as you mentioned before, and some like, some don't like. What's your take on shorter book or audio versions of the book?
So people consume books in different ways today. And I was surprised to find that there was a demand for the audiobook version of my original book of Great Demo. It turns out that about 1/6, 17% of all the books I've been selling since I produced the audio form are audiobook. People like to just sit and listen to it being read to them. I don't do that. I've never listened to an audiobook, but a lot of people like them. And so if you're drafting a book, contemplate that about a sixth of your audience is probably going to be interested in the audiobook format and may not even buy either the other two, paperback or Kindle or electronic, if you will. So the audiobook is an important entity on that. And I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question? I got lost.
No, no, good. I was basically saying that take on shorter books or
Ah,
audiobooks. You explain about audiobooks. And I guess about the shorter book. The book is relatively long. So people are like, oh, this is too long. I'm never going to read this. Give me a summary.
so I tried to draft both books in two parts. So the part one is the core methodology, introduced and explained. And those are, I think, maybe 100 pages each. Those are short books in the 6x9 format. And they're designed to enable somebody to consume it on a relatively short airplane flight or similar type of experience. That's what I used to say. Buy a copy of Great Demo. You should be able to finish it easily on a trip from New Jersey to Denver, for example, in the West. The second parts of each book are designed to be almost a menu to enable people to say, oh, I'm interested in this topic, or I'm interested in learning about that topic. And they're interdependent, but they can stand alone. So they really do act as, if you will, as a menu. So I talk about things like dovetails, Evgeniy, to some of your topics. I talk about a chapter in Great Demos, other forms of proof, where I'm talking about setting up POCs or POVs or deeper pilots and success criteria. I talk about style parameters, what kinds of things from physical appearance to verbal delivery pace to word choice to pointing methods. So these are all, if you will, standalone or can be standalone, although interrelated topics that people can pick up and choose to peruse as if it was from a menu. So they're really, I like to call each of these two books in one.
You had the first edition. 2 years later, you had another edition. And then was quite a
Mm-hmm.
big gap. And the third edition came out. How do you know when the next one will be out and or what will tip you to start writing the next one?
I wrote the third edition with the mindset that I will never write another edition to Great Demo. One of the reasons it's comparatively large is because I was trying to capture much of my know-how and expertise. A book like Great Demo and a book like Doing Discovery, those are time machines. They represent, and don't laugh when I say this, about 40 years of software sales, marketing, pre-sales, et cetera, experience. So, people who are learning and going through things and learning things, if you will, error by error, can leapfrog by consuming these time machines or by, if you will, enacting these time machines. So the third edition was really written at the request of my partners who said, we really want a third edition for the next 10, 15 years of Great Demo training. And so that's really why it was done. As I drafted it, I did draft it with the mindset that I don't want to do another edition. Doing Discovery, which came out a little over 2 years ago, it's quite likely there may be another edition of that. Now, there's another vehicle that I use quite richly, and that is blog posts and articles that if you look on greatdemo.com, the resources pages, there's easily 100 articles, and they range from maybe 6 pages to 15 pages of traditional paper reading, if you will. There's literally hundreds of blog posts, which are just little individual ideas, and I do a post every day or two. So what you're looking at there is almost the equivalent of, I would say, 3 or 4 additional books, which are designed to be much more elastic. So it's easier to change things, it's easier to evolve things, it's easy to add things or subtract ideas in accord with experiences and learning. When somebody's contemplating a book, and this was definitely the mindset for Great Demo, for drafting a book, write what you know is correct, appropriate, and long-lasting in the book itself. Because a book, as you can physically see here, is very difficult to change. And Evgeniy, you know that firsthand. However, contemplate a secondary mechanism like a website for you to add things, correct things, make changes, evolve methodologies, evolve ideas. So that's what the greatdemo.com website resources pages are all about.
When you're writing a book, you have an idea how long it's going to be, but not always. And then one point you need to stop and say, okay, it's done. What did happen in your head? Or how do you know you're done?
So this is one of the biggest challenges in drafting a book, because you can always say to yourself, oh, just one more thing. I'll just add this one more thing. And the act of doing that each time is an act of kicking the can down the road. And you can easily get to a point where you never publish. So you've got to draw a line. You have to say, this is sufficient. And the rescue for that is the knowledge of a second edition. With today's technologies, it's so easy to say, okay, this is done. If I need to make changes, if I want to add things, I can do a second edition. Or, as I just articulated earlier, you can stand up a website and add your changes and so forth there. So draw a line that says, have I addressed my original objectives for this book? And if the answer is yes, then put it to bed, get it published, and start thinking about a second edition or your add-ons separately. Hope that helps.
Agree. Yeah, I actually, in my mind, when I was doing my book, I realized, oh, this is a good topic. Like, okay, now we'll write a blog about this. We'll talk about this later, and future we'll figure out what to do.
Perfect. That's exactly the way to go.
Peter, thank you very much. Time flew very fast. Within half an hour, we've been recording. I think there's a lot of great information. People that are listening, doesn't matter if you're in cyber, cloud, SaaS, AI, whatever you demo, whatever you doing in a pre-sales and technical sales, highly suggest to check Peter's book and the school as well.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks so much.